I'm Lauren Walker, 31 years old, and the letter in my hand says the words I've chased since I was 20 weekend anchor CBS New York. I should be shouting into the ceiling, except I can hear my family whispering in the kitchen like I'm not home. The envelope is thick and official warm from my palm, while my coffee goes cold on the counter I bought secondhand after college. Through the doorway, my mother's voice carries a calm certainty that makes my chest tighten, the same tone she used when I was a kid, and she'd already decided what I would do. My father adds the line, "I've heard my whole life family comes first," like a rule carved into our dining room table. My sister's voice, softer and urgent, folds around the conversation, and I realize they're planning my future without asking me a thing. The old reflex is to step in, reassure them, promise I'll figure out a way to do everything for everyone. Instead, I keep the envelope pressed against my ribs and listen to the clock beat out the seconds I can't get back. The house smells like lemon cleaner and last night's roast, and for the first time I wonder what my life would smell like if I let it be mine. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from in the comments and tap like and subscribe if you've ever had to choose between who you are and who your family expects you to be. I grew up in a modest ranch house on a quiet street where people waved from porches and borrowed sugar without asking, the kind of place that made kindness feel like a duty and humility a daily practice. My parents worked hard and kept receipts in a coffee tin. My sister and I split chores down to the last dish, and Sunday nights meant pot roast church programs curled on the counter and talk about doing right by your people. I learned early to listen more than I spoke, to show up on time, to do the work. Nobody noticed, and somewhere along the way, helpful became my whole personality. When I landed my first job at the station, a cramped newsroom with buzzing lights and the never-ending hum of scanners, I felt like I was finally standing where I belonged, even if the chair wobbled and my paycheck stretched thin as deli meat. The work asked for everything: long nights, careful questions, and the steady voice you use when people are afraid, and I loved it so much I barely noticed how often I kept one foot at home. At first, the home and work balance felt simple. I could file a city council piece at noon and swing by to run lines with Chloe at 6. I could do an early live shot and still make it back to help my mother with the church fundraiser. It was just what we did: keep moving, keep giving, keep the peace. The city where I worked was only an hour from the house where I grew up, but it might as well have been two different worlds. In the newsroom, the walls held framed front pages and a dry erase calendar packed with deadlines. On my parents' fridge, family photos layered over grocery lists and notes, reminding me to call the plumber, pick up prescriptions, cover a car payment just this month. When Chloe started booking more auditions, I told myself it was a phase that I could drive her when she needed me, and still build a career that felt like mine. I believed the balance would hold, because I was holding it. The first real shift came quietly, the way seasons do. Assignments I wanted went to colleagues because I couldn't stay late. A conference in Chicago I'd saved for slipped off my calendar after a last-minute rehearsal emergency. I told myself this was what love looked like: steady and dependable, the kind of love my parents admired. Yet the station kept nudging me forward tougher stories, more airtime, the kind of feedback that makes your spine straighten, and in those moments I could feel something inside me stretching toward a larger life. On the rare mornings I was alone in my small apartment, I'd drink coffee by the window and imagine what it would be like to chase a story without scanning my phone for the next favor I couldn't say no to. Those thoughts felt disloyal and dangerous, so I folded them away and kept moving. When the CBS message first appeared in my inbox subject line, "Simple," my name clear as day, I didn't tell anyone. I read it once, then twice, then closed the laptop as if the words might spill out, and I kept my face the same when I walked into my parents' kitchen that evening. The offer didn't feel like a sudden miracle. It felt like a door opening in a hallway I had walked a long time with good shoes. I did what I always do. I gathered facts, asked questions, waited for a sign that the timing was right, and then the letter arrived, the kind you can hold that heft of paper that says, "Yes, this is real." I told myself I'd sit down with my parents, explain the schedule, the commute, the probationary period, the way weekends might look different, but the center of us would hold. Now I stand with the envelope tucked against my heart, while the people I love talk about my life like it's a casserole to divvy up, and something small but steady clicks into place. My mother lists the dangers of a big city. My father wonders aloud what will happen to Chloe without my car, my time, my wallet. My sister takes a breath that sounds like a cue. The hallway between us is short, but it feels like a bridge high over dark water, and I know the moment I step into that kitchen, the old rhythm will try to pull me back into step. I smooth the crease of the envelope with my thumb and take one breath, then another, the kind you take before a live shot when the red light is about to glow, and I move toward the doorway as their voices drop to a practiced hush. The envelope feels heavier as I step into the kitchen doorway. My mother's back stiffens before she turns her face smoothing into practiced concern. My father's eyes shift from her to me, and Chloe's hand stills over her phone. For a beat, no one speaks. The kitchen clock ticks once, twice the sound of the air vent hums in the silence. Then my father clears his throat. "We were just talking about you, sweetheart," he says. His voice carries that old mix of authority and forced warmth. "New York isn't safe. You'd be alone there." My mother dabs at the corner of her eye with a tissue. "And you know how much your sister needs you right now. We're all just thinking about what's best for the family." I hold the envelope between us, its edge digging into my palm. I heard everything I say, my voice quieter than I expect. "You were planning to stop me from leaving." Chloe's lips part in surprise, then curve into a wounded frown. "That's not true," she says quickly. I saw the email when it came through. I didn't mean anything by it." Her tone softens into the kind of innocence she's perfected over years of casting calls. My father gestures toward the table. "Sit down, Lauren. We can talk this out." The words land like a command. I stay standing. My mother folds her hands together, the picture of patience. "Honey, you know how much we've done for you. Your father helped with your tuition. We've supported you every step of the way." I shake my head before I can stop myself. "The scholarships paid for my degree, Mom. I worked nights at the station to cover the rest." Her expression doesn't falter, just rearranges into something gentler, more disappointed. "Well, maybe that's how you remember it," she says. "But we've all sacrificed for each other. That's what family does." Chloe pushes her chair back and stands. "You can't move now," she says, her voice trembling just enough to sound genuine. "I have 3 auditions next week. Who's going to drive me? Who's going to help me with my lines?" The question hangs in the air like smoke. I picture the miles I've driven for her, the gas receipts in my glove box, the long waits in cold parking lots outside studios where she walked in confident and walked out teary, and the way I always told her she'd get the next one. My father's jaw tightens. "This is about responsibility, Lauren. You're part of this family. We're counting on you." The words "counting on you" fall the same way they always do, heavy and inescapable. My shoulders tighten as he goes on about duty, about how he and my mother can't keep carrying the load alone, about how Chloe's career is at a critical point. My mother chimes in again. "It's not fair for us to start over. You've built something stable here. Why risk it?" She reaches for my hand, her fingers cool and deliberate. "You can always apply again later. New York isn't going anywhere." I look at the 3 of them, my mother's carefully composed face, my father's impatient frown, Chloe's artful distress, and something inside me shifts. The air feels too thin, the room too bright. My throat tightens around words I didn't plan to say. I'm considering the offer I tell them. The room goes still. My father's chair creaks as he sits back. "You can't be serious," he says. My mother's hand falls away. Chloe whispers, "You're just going to abandon us." I fold the letter and slide it into my pocket. "It's a weekend anchor position," I say evenly. "At CBS New York." My father's voice hardens. "You're making a mistake. You're not ready for that kind of move." His tone leaves no room for discussion. My mother shakes her head slowly. "You'll regret this, Lauren." Her disappointment settles in the air like dust, fine and suffocating. I turn toward the doorway, each step feeling heavier than the last. "Where are you going?" Chloe's voice cracks behind me. "You can't just walk away." My hand finds the door frame, the wood smooth beneath my fingers. "I can," I say, and I am. I leave the kitchen without another word. Their voices rise as I reach the stairs. Confusion, disbelief, then sharp alarm, but the sounds fade once my bedroom door closes. I lean against it, the letter pressed to my chest. The quiet settles deep. For once, I don't rush to explain myself. The next morning, my apartment feels smaller than usual, every corner filled with reminders of how much I've given up for them. The air smells faintly of brewed coffee and damp drywall. I clear the kitchen table and spread out bank statements in neat rows, each one telling a story they never cared to read. I trace the numbers with my fingertip: $800 for Chloe's acting workshop, $200 for her headshots, $350 for a dialect coach. 3 years of transactions, each one a quiet yes when I should have said no. The highlighter marks form a map of exhaustion. My phone buzzes again. The 5th missed call from my mother. I let it ring. When it stops, the silence is sharp. I turn to my planner, flipping through months of scribbles and crossed-out plans. Conference in Chicago replaced by Chloe's callback. Lunch with producer replaced by help Chloe prep. I stare at the pages until the ink blurs. The walls feel closer, the air heavier. The phone rings again. I almost ignore it, but my hand moves on its own. "Lauren," my mother's voice is already trembling. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Is that what you want? Is that what this is doing to him?" I grip the edge of the table. "Mom, I'm still thinking about the offer," I say quietly. "There's nothing to think about," she snaps. "You owe your family. We raised you to understand that." The folder slips from my hands, papers scattering across the floor. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" The question comes out calm, steadier than I feel. The silence that follows stretches thin. When she finally speaks, her tone is sharp enough to cut. "I see you've made your choice then." The line goes dead. The phone rings again almost immediately. My father's voice replaces hers, measured but heavy. "Lauren, listen. Your sister can't make it without your help. You know that." I glance at the lease agreement with my signature next to Chloe's. "Maybe it's time she learned," I say. He exhales through the receiver. "That's not like you. We've always been able to count on you." I don't respond. The disappointment in his voice would have crushed me once. Now it just hangs there. When the call ends, I sink into the chair surrounded by bills, receipts, and silence. My phone lights up again, this time a notification. Chloe's new post fills the screen, a black and white photo of her staring out a window, captioned with a string of words that twist the knife just enough. "When family abandons you, right when your dreams begin to take flight." My thumb hovers over the screen before I set it face down. Within minutes, more notifications flood in, comments from cousins, old family friends, people I haven't seen in years, all comforting poor Chloe. The image of myself they'll build from this post will have nothing to do with the truth. By noon, my inbox is full of messages from relatives urging me to do the right thing. At work, I keep my head down, trying to focus on the city council corruption story spread across my desk. The station hums with the usual chatter of reporters chasing deadlines, but every sound feels distant. Tom Hargrove stops by, leaning against the edge of my cubicle. "Heard about CBS," he says softly. I glance up, startled. "You deserve it," he adds. His smile is quiet but genuine. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." That evening, I stop by Mrs. Whitaker's apartment on my way home. She's watering a row of plants that line her window, her gray hair pinned neatly. "Heard you on the phone earlier," she says, "about New York." I nod, waiting for the lecture. She sets down the watering can and adjusts her glasses. "It's time you lived for yourself, dear." Her hand, wrinkled and warm, rests briefly on mine. Some birds don't leave the nest because they're afraid. Others stay because no one told them they could fly. Her words follow me back to my apartment, echoing softly in the stillness. I sit at the kitchen table, the CBS letter beside me. The window reflects my face in the fading light, half shadow, half hope. Somewhere beyond the glass, the city waits loud and alive. Inside, the phone stays silent for the first time all day. I take a slow breath and trace the embossed CBS logo with my thumb, the paper smooth under my hand. Tomorrow I'll need to decide. But tonight, for the first time, the decision feels like mine. The week slides by in a blur of long days at the station and quiet evenings spent avoiding my phone. Each time it lights up with another call from home, I turn it face down until the screen goes dark. The silence is easier to handle than the sound of my mother's voice, practiced and heavy with guilt. By Friday, there are 12 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and a handful of unread messages that all start with "Lauren, please." I leave them unopened. Saturday morning, I find a handwritten invitation tucked into my apartment door, the familiar loops of my mother's handwriting unmistakable. Family dinner tomorrow, everyone will be there. I hold the note between my fingers, already picturing the table, my mother's careful smile, my father's warnings disguised as advice, Chloe's watery eyes. The word everyone lands like a warning. When Sunday evening arrives, I park outside my parents' house and watch the driveway fill with cars. My uncle's silver sedan gleams under the porch light, and I can see movement behind the curtains, silhouettes crossing back and forth. I take a deep breath before stepping inside. The smell of pot roast hits me first, familiar and heavy. My mother greets me at the door with a kiss that barely touches my cheek. "We're so glad you came," she says, her tone a little too bright. My father's handshake is firm and wordless. Across the room, Chloe sits at the dining table, her eyes red, a tissue balled in her fist. The meal begins like a play, everyone's rehearsed. Uncle Robert starts with a speech about family sticking together through challenging seasons. My cousin Jennifer chimes in about how much siblings need each other. My grandmother pats my hand gently and says, "In my day, sisters never abandoned one another." Each line is delivered with care, perfectly timed, perfectly coordinated. Chloe sits in the center like the guest of honor, her voice trembling as she says, "I just don't know how I'll manage without Lauren's help. My career is at such a fragile point right now." No one looks at me directly. They just nod in agreement, glancing at one another, as if my silence confirms their story. I focus on my plate, cutting small bites I don't taste. The mashed potatoes are smooth and buttery just the way my mother makes them, but I barely swallow. The conversation swells around me, filling every corner of the room. Finally, my mother sets her fork down and folds her hands. "Lauren has always understood the importance of family," she says softly. "She'll make the right decision." Her eyes flick to mine with quiet authority. Every gaze follows, waiting for me to promise that I'll stay. I glance around the table, the expectant faces, the nods of agreement, the unspoken assumption that my life belongs to them. For a long moment, I say nothing. Then I take another bite of my dinner, slow and deliberate. The scrape of my fork against the plate cuts through the quiet. No one seems to know what to do with my silence. When the meal ends, I stand thanking my grandmother and placing my napkin on the table. My mother rises too, her voice soft but sharp. "We'll talk later, dear." I nod, walking past her toward the door. The night air feels cold and clean as I step outside. For the first time, I don't look back through the window to wave. Monday morning, I wake to another storm brewing online. Chloe has posted a new photo, her face turned toward a window, streaks of mascara visible, captioned with a few careful words. "When the person you trusted most leaves without warning." Hundreds of comments flood in. Friends, relatives, even co-workers, all offering sympathy. My name doesn't appear, but it doesn't have to. Everyone knows who she's talking about. At the station, whispers follow me like shadows. By lunchtime, 3 different co-workers have stopped by my desk with concerned looks and quiet questions. "Everything okay with your family?" "Heard there's some tension at home." I nod politely, giving short answers, pretending it doesn't sting. When I pass the open office of Mark Benton, I overhear him talking to someone. "Family troubles can affect job performance," he says. A pause follows, and then another voice, my father's, filters through the speaker. "We're just concerned about Lauren's stability. These family commitments have been overwhelming for her." My hands go still around the folder I'm holding. He's called my boss. That evening, I sit on my living room floor, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the apartment. My phone buzzes again, and I let it ring until it stops. I open a leather-bound journal Jenna sent me last week. Inside the front cover, a note reads, "Remember who you were before they told you who to be." The pages are blank, intimidating in their simplicity. I stare at the first one until the lines start to blur, then pick up a pen. The first words come slowly, awkwardly, but soon they spill out faster. Memories, frustrations, things I've never said aloud. By the time I stop, 6 pages are full, and my hand aches. Over the next few days, I go through the motions at work. I finish my assignments, attend meetings, smile when I'm supposed to, and then return home to the quiet comfort of writing. Each night, the pages fill with stories I'd buried beneath obligations. The act of putting them down feels like exhaling for the first time. Late Thursday afternoon, I meet Tom in the hallway near the editing suite. He offers a small smile. "You holding up?" he asks. I nod. "Just busy." He lowers his voice. When I moved to Chicago, my sister pulled the same thing, said I was abandoning the family. Best decision I ever made. He gives my shoulder a brief, reassuring squeeze before heading back to his office. Friday evening, I find myself walking into a small community center near my apartment. A flyer on the bulletin board caught my eye earlier in the week: Adult Children of Manipulative Parents Support Group Fridays at 7. Inside, fluorescent lights buzz overhead, and a circle of folding chairs waits in the middle of the room. I take one near the back. The facilitator, a soft-spoken woman named Joan, opens the meeting with introductions. One by one, people share stories that sound achingly familiar. They make you feel responsible for their happiness. Joan says, her voice calm but firm. That's how they keep you tied to them. When I walk home later that night, the streets are quiet. The air smells faintly of rain. Her words echo in my head with every step. I unlock my apartment and stand for a moment in the doorway, surrounded by the pieces of a life I've built on my own cheap furniture stacks of notes, the hum of freedom just beginning to sound real. I sit by the window, the city lights flickering against the glass. For the first time, I let the thoughts settle in fully. My career, my promotions, my small but steady success, it all happened not because of my family's support, but in spite of their interference. The realization doesn't come with anger, only clarity. I look down at my journal still open on the table and write a single sentence across the next blank page. They taught me to give until I disappeared. I'm learning how to exist again. When I close the book, the room feels lighter. Outside, a siren wails in the distance, fading as it turns down another street. Tomorrow will bring more calls, more attempts to pull me back into the same patterns. But tonight, for the first time, I know which voice I'll listen to, and it won't be theirs. By Monday morning, my desk is neat, my inbox cleared, and my voice steady enough to deliver the morning segment without a hitch. Outside, the sky hangs low and gray, a winter kind of quiet stretching across the city. I grab a coffee from the break room before heading back to my cubicle, where my reflection in the computer screen looks calm enough to fool anyone. Inside, everything still feels like it's rearranging itself. The weekend's family dinner plays through my mind in flashes. Chloe's tears, my mother's forced smile, my father's long silences that spoke louder than words. But between those memories, another one keeps pushing through. Joan's voice at the meeting, soft but unwavering. They make you feel responsible for their happiness. The truth in that sentence has been echoing through every corner of my life since I heard it. After the broadcast wraps for the day, I walk down to Tom's office with a folder of notes. He's editing footage, headphones around his neck. When he sees me, he sets them aside. "You look lighter," he says simply. I shrug. "Maybe I'm just tired of being tired." He chuckles quietly. That's usually when people finally start making moves. He hands me a sheet of paper, a list of rental listings in Brooklyn with small notes scribbled beside them. "My cousin's a realtor up there. Just think about it." That night back home, I open the leather journal again. My handwriting from the last few nights fills several pages, each line a small piece of myself I've been reclaiming. I write until the sound of the pen against the paper starts to steady my breathing. I write about the first time I realized my achievements only mattered when they reflected well on the family, and the last time I allowed someone else's disappointment to steer my choices. Somewhere between the lines, I can feel the version of me that existed before the constant guilt, before every decision was filtered through obligation. On Wednesday, I decide to stop avoiding my parents' calls. The phone rings at 7:00 p.m., right on schedule. My mother's name glows on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Lauren," finally, she says, her voice already thick with emotion. "We've been so worried. Your father hasn't been sleeping, and Chloe, well, she's just heartbroken." I glance at the open suitcase on my bed, half packed with sweaters and work files. I'm okay, Mom, I tell her. Just working through things. You're working yourself into a corner, she says sharply. This job, this move, it's not realistic. You have people depending on you. I hear my father's voice faintly in the background, murmuring something about responsibility. My mother continues. We're just asking you to think about what you're walking away from. I grip the phone tighter. I've thought about it, I say, and I'm still moving forward. For a few seconds, she doesn't reply. Then her voice lowers quieter but sharper. If you do this, don't expect us to clean up what you leave behind. The line goes dead. I sit on the edge of my bed, the phone still in my hand, and stare at the small pile of folded clothes. A quiet calm spreads through me, not relief exactly, but something close. My next call is to Marcus Reed at CBS. He answers on the second ring, his tone professional but warm. Lauren Walker, he says. I was hoping you'd call. By the time the conversation ends, the decision is no longer theoretical. It's signed, sealed, and in motion. Thursday morning at the station, I feel the shift the moment I walk through the door. The newsroom buzzes as usual, but for me everything feels sharper, more alive. During the afternoon editorial meeting, Mark Benton looks up from his notes. Lauren, I heard CBS made it official, he says with a small grin. The room quiets for a beat before soft applause breaks out. Tom winks from across the table. About time, he says. That evening when I return to my apartment, there's a knock on the door. Mabel stands there holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. For your big transition, she says with a smile, and don't argue it freezes well. I laugh, letting her in. We sit for a while over tea, her presence grounding and familiar. You remind me of my niece, she says. She spent years putting everyone else first. One day, she just stopped asking permission to be happy. After she leaves, I set the dish in the freezer and lean against the counter. The quiet hum of the refrigerator fills the space, the same hum that used to sound like loneliness, but now feels like peace. I open my laptop and check my personal email, the one none of my family can access. There, sitting unread, is a message from Marcus. We're pleased to formally offer you the weekend anchor position at CBS New York. My hand trembles slightly as I scroll through the details. Salary figures, relocation support, start date 3 weeks away. A note at the bottom mentions that the first month's rent for a furnished apartment in Brooklyn Heights has already been handled. I close the laptop gently, the corners of my mouth lifting before I even realize it. Over the next few days, I move quietly but deliberately. I remove my name from Chloe's lease and close the joint bank accounts that tied our finances together. I spend an afternoon at the bank signing forms that make it official, the teller sliding each document across the counter with a polite smile. When the last signature dries, she says, "That's everything, Ms. Walker. You're all set." Outside, the winter air bites at my cheeks as I step onto the sidewalk. The city feels different today, crisp, open, filled with possibility. My phone rings as I walk. It's my father. I answer, bracing myself. His voice is subdued, careful. "Lauren," he says, "I'm at the hospital. They're running tests on my heart." I stop walking. "Which hospital?" I ask automatically. "County General," he says after a pause. "Dr. Miller is handling it." A strange stillness washes over me. "Dad," I say slowly. "Dr. Miller retired last year. You told me that yourself at Thanksgiving." There's silence on the line, then a faint cough. "I meant the new doctor," he says quickly. His name just slipped my mind. I close my eyes, the familiar script unfolding in real time. "I hope you're all right," I tell him. "Keep me posted." Before he can respond, I end the call. 20 minutes later, my mother's number flashes across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, this time from Aunt Martha. She leaves a message urging me to come to my senses before it's too late. I listen to the first few seconds, then delete it. That night, I sit by the window, the glow of the street lamps spilling across my living room. My journal lies open beside me, pages filled with ink. I write one more sentence before closing it for the night. They'll say it's selfishness, but maybe it's finally self-respect. I look out at the city stretching beyond the glass lights scattered like promises. The next chapter is waiting, and for the first time, I'm not afraid of what comes with turning the page. By Friday afternoon, the newsroom hums with the low rhythm of printers and muted conversation. My segment notes are stacked neatly on my desk, but my mind keeps drifting toward the future, waiting just beyond these walls. I've already signed the papers, packed half my apartment, and closed every financial tie that used to pull me backward. All that's left now is to tell them face to face. When I get home, there's a message from my mother. Family dinner tomorrow. Everyone will be there. Her tone in the recording is smooth, almost casual, but the phrasing feels more like a summons than an invitation. I set the phone down and stare at the wall for a moment before deleting it. Still, the next evening, I find myself driving the familiar route to my parents' house. The porch light is already on when I pull up, glowing like a watchful eye in the early dusk. Inside, the dining room looks exactly as it always does. The same lace runner, the same framed photos, the same scent of pot roast simmering in the slow cooker. But the air feels heavy, expectant. My father stands near the window, hands clasped behind his back. My mother fusses with the silverware, though it's already perfectly aligned. Chloe sits at the end of the table, makeup just enough to highlight her eyes, her phone face down beside her plate. "Lauren, you made it," my mother says, her voice bright. "We've been waiting." I nod and take my seat. The meal begins without ceremony. Roast mashed potatoes, a basket of rolls. Conversation starts with safe topics, weather, local news, a neighbor's remodel. Then my father clears his throat. "So he says this move of yours, it's not official yet, is it?" I meet his eyes. "It's been official since Tuesday." The sound that follows isn't quite silence, more like a collective intake of breath. My mother sets her fork down, the clink louder than it should be. "You accepted without telling us?" she asks softly. "We thought you were still deciding." Chloe leans forward. "What about me?" she says, her voice trembling just enough. "I've got a call back next week and I need your help. I can't do it alone." I take a sip of water before answering. "You'll figure it out," I say. "You always do." My father leans back in his chair, his expression darkening. "That's not how we raised you," he says. "You don't turn your back on family." I glance around the table, my mother's folded hands, Chloe's wide eyes, the roast cooling between us, and realize they truly don't see what I've been giving up all these years. "I'm not turning my back," I tell them quietly. "I'm just walking my own way." My mother presses a napkin to her lips, blinking fast. "You're being cold, Lauren. This isn't like you." Her disappointment lands with the same weight it always has, but this time it doesn't pin me down. I push my plate slightly away and fold my napkin neatly beside it. "Maybe this is who I've always been," I say. The room stays still for a long moment before my father stands. "If this is your choice," he says, "then you'll have to live with the consequences." His voice is calm but firm, the same tone he used when I was a teenager and missed curfew. I nod. I already am. When I leave that night, the air outside is crisp, the kind that carries the smell of damp leaves and cooling earth. The porch light flickers as I walk to my car. Through the window, I can see them still sitting at the table, heads close together. The familiar picture of unity, one that never really included me. The next morning, I wake early and spend the day sorting through the last of my things. Boxes line the living room, each labeled in neat handwriting, "Books, Kitchen, Office." I take a break to answer a message from Marcus confirming my first on-air date. His email ends with, "We're excited to have you join the team." For the first time in a long while, the words we're excited for, you don't come with conditions attached. That evening, I post a brief update on social media, excited to share that I've accepted a weekend anchor position with CBS New York. Grateful for this opportunity and looking forward to the next chapter. Within minutes, messages begin pouring in, colleagues, mentors, friends from college. Every notification chimes like affirmation. By the time I finish packing the last box, it's almost midnight. I stand in the middle of the room, surrounded by echoes of who I've been, photos, of Chloe's auditions, notes from my early stories, the small stack of awards I never celebrated because someone else's crisis always came first. I take one long look, then close the lid on the final box. Sunday morning, my phone rings before I've even had coffee. It's Chloe. "I'm outside," she says. Her voice sounds fragile, uncertain. When I open the door, she's standing there in a long coat, her makeup smudged. "Can we talk?" she asks. I step aside. She walks in, her eyes scanning the boxes. "So it's really happening," she says quietly. "You're leaving." I nod. "Tomorrow morning." She looks down at her hands. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." I cross my arms, waiting. "It's not about doing anything to you," I say. "It's about finally doing something for me." Her eyes fill, but she doesn't cry. "I just thought we were a team," she says. "You've always been there." The words are soft, not angry, and for a moment I see the girl she used to be, wide-eyed and hopeful, not yet shaped by expectation. "You'll be fine, Chloe," I tell her. "You're stronger than you think." When she leaves, the door closes quietly behind her. I lean against it for a long moment, listening to the silence settle. Outside, the sun is already low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I make tea, sit by the window, and watch the city lights flicker on one by one. Later that evening, I gather the paperwork I've been keeping in a blue folder. Bank statements, lease transfers, confirmation emails. Each page marks another small boundary drawn, another tie carefully unknotted. I tuck the folder into my suitcase and zip it shut. Before bed, I call Mrs. Whitaker to thank her for storing a few boxes in her spare room. "You're welcome, dear," she says, her voice warm. "Just promise me you'll let yourself enjoy this new start." I smile into the phone. "I will." When morning comes, the moving truck arrives right on time. The driver loads each box with careful efficiency. The last thing I pack is a single framed photo of me and Chloe from years ago, both of us laughing arms around each other after one of her plays. I place it on top of my suitcase before closing the trunk. As the truck pulls away, I lock the door to my apartment for the last time. My phone buzzes in my pocket, another call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. The taxi driver opens the door and asks where to. I glance out the window as the city skyline fades behind us. "Brooklyn Heights," I say. The ride is quiet, the hum of the tires steady against the pavement. At a red light, I catch my reflection in the glass, calm, steady, ready. The city ahead feels both foreign and familiar, like a story I've been waiting to enter. I don't know exactly what comes next, but I know this much. I'm finally moving toward it on my own terms. The morning air is cold and sharp when I open the door to load my last suitcase into the taxi. The city is just waking streetlights fading against a pale sky. Behind me, the apartment stands half empty, echoing in a way that feels both strange and freeing. As I set the final box down, the sound of footsteps on the stairwell makes me turn. My family stands there, Mom, Dad, and Chloe, all three wearing expressions that blend worry and disbelief. "Lauren, wait," my mother says, her hand outstretched. She's still in her robe hair, pinned neatly like she expected to stage one last argument. "We need to talk before you go." I step aside, letting them in, but my chest tightens at the sight of them standing in my space. This small, honest life I built without their supervision. Boxes line the walls, each one labeled and sealed. My father looks around like he's inspecting damage after a storm. "You can't leave things like this," he says quietly. Chloe moves closer, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. "My car broke down," she says. "I have an audition tomorrow. I thought maybe—" Her voice falters when I don't respond. My mother steps forward, holding a manila folder. "We just need your signature on some trust documents before you go," she says gently. "It's nothing complicated." My father clears his throat. "And we were thinking," he adds, "maybe tell people this is a sabbatical instead of a permanent move. It sounds better." The word sabbatical lands with a dull thud. I set my bag down. "That's what you've been telling everyone I ask." My mother meets my eyes unflinching. "It's easier to explain. People understand taking a break." Chloe's voice breaks the quiet. "If you really loved us," she whispers, "you wouldn't make this permanent." The air in the room shifts, dense with expectation. I take a slow breath and gesture toward the couch. "Come in," I say. "It's time we actually talk." They hesitate, then sit. The three of them look smaller, somehow framed by the empty room. I stay standing, steadying myself with the counter behind me. "For 30 years," I begin, "I've been the daughter and sister you needed me to be. I drove to auditions, paid bills, canceled plans, and called it love. But this," I motion to the packed boxes, "this is what it looks like when I finally choose myself." My mother opens her mouth, but I hold up a hand. I'm not angry, I say, but I am done pretending we've all sacrificed equally. I walk to the table where a blue folder waits. Inside are pages I've spent nights preparing: bank transfers, calendars, printed messages. I lay them out one by one. Here's what I've contributed to Chloe's rent classes, headshots, and car payments: $47,000 over 5 years. Chloe's hand flies to her mouth. You offered, she says quickly. You said you wanted to help. I nod. I did. Until help became expectation. I point to another page, a printed calendar marked with red and blue ink. These red marks are opportunities I missed because of family needs. The blue ones are so-called emergencies that somehow disappeared once I showed up. My father shifts in his seat. You're making this sound calculated, he says. It is, I reply softly, because it's the first time I've actually done the math. I pick up my phone from the counter and open the message thread. March 4th. Chloe, you said you couldn't make rent. June 12th, you asked me to call in sick to drive you to Chicago. September 28th, you borrowed my blue dress and never replaced it. None of it ruined me, but all of it chipped away at something I can't get back. The silence that follows is heavy. My mother dabs at her eyes, though they're dry. Lauren, this isn't like you, she says. You've always been the responsible one. I nod again. Exactly. And that's the problem. I walk to my bookshelf, pull out a slim paperback, and hand it to Chloe. This is a basic financial guide I bought for you 3 years ago. You never opened it. She stares at the cover as if it's written in another language. I don't need this, she says weakly. I need you. No, I say gently. You want me. There's a difference. My father stands abruptly. After everything we've done for you, he starts, his voice rising. This is how you repay us. I look him straight in the eye. What exactly did you give up for my career? The question lands between us, sharp and clean. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. For the first time, he has no answer. My mother finally speaks, her voice trembling. What will people think, Lauren? How will we explain this? I reach into my pocket, pull out my house key, and set it on the coffee table. That's not my concern anymore, I say. You can tell them whatever story you need to. Chloe rises, panic flickering across her face. But what about my audition tomorrow? My rent next month? I meet her eyes. You'll figure it out, I say quietly. I have faith you will. For a moment, no one moves. Then my father steps toward the door, muttering something under his breath. My mother follows, clutching the manila folder to her chest. Chloe lingers, staring at me as though waiting for me to change my mind. When she finally turns to leave, I don't stop her. The door closes softly behind them. The quiet that follows is almost startling. The ticking clock sounds louder. The hum of the fridge fills the room. I sit down at the kitchen table, my heart pounding but steady. Outside, the afternoon light shifts toward gold, streaking through the blinds. I think about the thousands of mornings I started half awake, juggling everyone else's needs before my own. Tomorrow, that changes. That night, I don't sleep much. I pack the last of my clothes, label a few stray boxes, and clean the counters until the surfaces shine. At dawn, the taxi arrives. The driver loads my luggage as I lock the door one final time. When I turn around, my family is there again, standing on the sidewalk, looking smaller in the early light. My mother clutches her robe tighter. My father's arms are crossed, and Chloe's eyes are red. They don't say a word as the driver places my suitcase in the trunk. I nod once, not in anger, but in acknowledgement. Each thud of the luggage against the car feels like a door closing quietly behind me. I slide into the back seat, the leather cool beneath my palms. As we pull away, I glance through the side mirror. Their figures shrink with each block until they're nothing but shadows against the sunrise. The ride to the train station is quiet. The city outside the window feels wide and new, the kind of morning where everything seems possible. The driver hums softly to a song on the radio, unaware that this moment marks the clean line between who I've been and who I'm becoming. When the taxi slows at a red light, I catch my reflection in the glass, steady, clear, almost peaceful. By the time the train pulls out of the station, the city skyline fades behind me. My phone vibrates once with a new message from Chloe. Just 2 words, "Good luck." I stare at the screen for a long moment, then set it face down beside me. The tracks hum beneath the car, rhythmic and sure. For the first time in years, the only direction I'm moving is forward. The New York skyline comes into view through the cab window like a slow exhale after holding my breath too long. Buildings stretch upward into a soft gray sky, the kind that feels heavy but full of promise. When the cab turns toward Brooklyn Heights, the streets, narrow, lined with trees, still bare from winter. I roll the window down slightly, letting in air that smells like coffee rain and the faint hum of possibility. My new apartment sits on the top floor of a brownstone with wide steps and worn railings. The movers are already there unloading boxes that look smaller against the city's vastness. I tip them, thank them, and stand in the middle of my living room, surrounded by the quiet sound of starting over. The space is small, 2 rooms tall, windows light spilling in from the street, but it feels like mine in a way nothing else ever has. By evening, I've unpacked enough to make it feel like home. My laptop sits on the counter glowing softly with emails from the CBS team. The schedule is clear. My first broadcast airs in 2 weeks. Marcus's message is brief but warm. "Welcome to the family. We're glad you're here." I close the laptop and lean back, letting the words settle. For once, being part of something doesn't mean losing myself. That first week moves fast. Orientation, wardrobe fittings, camera tests, each day filled with small adjustments and big learning curves. The studio lights feel brighter than anything at my old station, the city stories sharper and faster. But as soon as the cameras roll, something familiar returns. My voice steadies, my rhythm locks in, and the nervous hum fades into focus. When the red light blinks for the first live segment, I breathe deeply and begin. "Good evening, New York. I'm Lauren Walker." The words sound both strange and right, like they've been waiting for this exact moment. The half hour that follows blurs into instinct headlines, transitions steady eye contact with the invisible audience I've dreamed of reaching. When the show ends, the control room erupts with quiet cheers. Marcus steps out, offering a handshake that turns into a brief, proud pat on the shoulder. "Good work," he says. "You handled that segment on the transit strike like you've been here for years." My throat tightens, but I manage a smile. "Thank you," I say. "It felt good to be here." That night, I walk home through the cool air, the city lights glinting off wet pavement. Every block hums with motion, people hitting somewhere, always somewhere. I pass a corner cafe still open and stop for a cup of tea to go. On the walk back, I think about how different this feels. No one waiting on me, no one tracking my every move. Just space. Over the next few weeks, I fall into a rhythm that feels steady and alive. Early mornings filled with research, afternoon meetings, weekend broadcasts that leave me both tired and fulfilled. My small apartment begins to reflect the change plants by the window-framed photos from college, a stack of cookbooks I finally have time to use. One Sunday after wrapping the evening show, I join the crew for dinner at a quiet diner a few blocks from the studio. The conversation is easy, the laughter real. A producer named Diane clinks her glass against mine. "To the calmest live debut we've had in months," she says. I laugh, shaking my head. Let's hope it stays that way. When I return home later that night, the glow from the street lamps drifts across the floor. I pour a cup of tea and sit by the window. My phone buzzes with a message from Mabel. "Proud of you, dear. The city suits you." I smile and send a photo of my view, the skyline dotted with light. "It's starting to feel like home," I reply. The following morning, I scroll through social media while waiting for coffee to brew. Chloe has posted photos from an audition wearing the blazer I left behind. The caption reads, "New chapter, new chances." Dad comments beneath it, "Proud of you, kiddo." Another photo shows Mom holding a new coffee maker and the kitchen cookbook pages open beside her. None of it stings the way it used to. Instead, it feels like watching people learn to walk without leaning. That evening, I call home for the first time since moving. My mother answers on the 3rd ring. "Lauren," she says, her voice careful. "We were just talking about you." I can hear dishes clinking in the background, the faint sound of the television. "How are you settling in?" "I'm doing well," I say. "The job's good. The people are kind." There's a pause. Then she sighs softly. The dishwasher's making that noise again. Your father keeps saying we should call the repairman, but you always knew which part it was. I stir the pasta on the stove. There's a card with their number in the kitchen drawer, I say gently. Give them a call tomorrow. She hesitates. It's just not the same without you here. I keep my voice even. I know, but you'll manage. She doesn't argue. When we hang up, the call ends on a quiet note, not distance, but balance. 2 months later, the station offers me a chance to co-anchor a feature on career reinvention profiles of people starting over in midlife. As I interview guests, their stories start to echo parts of my own change that begins in silence, courage found after exhaustion. When the segment airs, the feedback is immediate messages from viewers who see themselves in the story. One note reads, "Thank you for reminding me it's not too late to start again." After the broadcast, Marcus calls me into his office. "That was one of the best pieces we've aired all quarter," he says. "You've got a rare mix of empathy and authority. Keep leaning into that." His words settle deep, grounding, and clear. That night, I meet Jenna for dinner. She's in town for a work trip full of the same bright energy she's always had. "Look at you," she says, grinning across the table. "New city, big job, calm as ever." I laugh, shaking my head. Not calm, just learning to breathe differently. When I get home, the apartment feels unusually still. I make tea, step onto the small balcony, and look out at the skyline stretching toward the horizon. For years, I thought freedom would feel loud, like running or shouting or breaking away. But it's quieter than I expected. It's the sound of my own life, steady and unfolding. A few days later, Marcus stops by my desk after the morning meeting. "Corporate wants to feature your career segment nationally," he says. "They'll need you in Manhattan for a few weeks." I nod, caught between surprise and disbelief. "Are you sure?" He smiles. "You've earned it." That night, I call my parents to tell them the news. My father's voice is warm but measured. "That sounds demanding," he says. "Will you have time to visit?" I answer honestly. "I'll make time for what matters." The line goes quiet for a beat. Then he says, "We're proud of you, Lauren." After we hang up, I stand by the window, the lights of the city reflecting against the glass. In the distance, a plane crosses the sky, its path steady and sure. Somewhere between the noise and the quiet, I realize the thing I've been chasing all along isn't success, it's peace. Tomorrow will bring another broadcast, another headline, another story to tell. But tonight, for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of being the main character in my own. Autumn settles into the city before I realize how quickly the months have passed. The leaves outside my apartment turn gold and drift onto the sidewalk, gathering in small piles that dance whenever a car rushes by. Inside, my life feels steady, no longer something I'm constantly managing or defending, just something I'm quietly living. Each morning begins the same way: a walk for coffee, a review of the day's headlines, a train ride that carries me toward a job that finally feels like mine. The national segment launches in late October, and the first night I anchor it, the nerves hit me hard. But when the camera light flashes red, the words flow the way they always do, steady, grounded, sure. The story that night is about resilience, about people who rebuilt their lives after losing everything. As I read the final lines, I realize I'm speaking to more than an audience. I'm speaking to the woman I used to be. When the broadcast ends, the control room breaks into soft applause. Marcus appears at the edge of the set, his expression calm but proud. "You handled that beautifully," he says. "You've got a rare way of making people feel seen." His words linger long after he walks away. The next evening, my phone rings while I'm cooking dinner. It's my mother. Her voice sounds quieter, stripped of its usual urgency. "Your father and I watched you on television," she says. "You looked happy." I lean against the counter, the sound of the city faint through my open window. I answer. There's a pause, the kind that used to fill with guilt, but this time it doesn't. She clears her throat. "Chloe got a small role in an independent film. She's paying her own rent now." I smile, even though she can't see it. "That's great news, Mom." I think she continues, "We didn't realize how much we were asking of you. Sometimes when you're used to someone holding everything together, you forget how heavy it gets for them." Her voice wavers. "I'm sorry, Lauren. For a long moment, I just listened to the soft sound of her breathing. "Thank you for saying that," I tell her. "It's not an apology I ever expected, but it's enough." After we hang up, I walk to the window and look out over the quiet street below. The city lights blur in the distance, and a breeze carries the smell of rain and roasted chestnuts from a vendor on the corner. I think about how far I've come from the girl who could never say no, who mistook silence for peace. Now when I sit in stillness, it doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like ownership. Weeks pass, and life finds a rhythm I never thought possible. On Sunday mornings, I meet Jenna for brunch. Sometimes I call Mabel just to check on her plants. My coworkers have become friends who ask about my ideas, not my obligations. At work, the producers start assigning me more human interest stories, pieces about perseverance and new beginnings. One afternoon, I realize why those stories come so naturally. They mirror the one I've been living all along. As winter approaches, I visit home for the first time in nearly a year. The drive feels shorter than I remember, though. The landscape looks the same: quiet streets, the same oak tree shading the corner of our yard. My father meets me at the door, his expression a mix of pride and uncertainty. "You made it," he says softly. Inside the table is already set. My mother brings out a roast, and Chloe hums quietly while setting down silverware. There's no tension this time, no unspoken ledger of debts and sacrifices. Just dinner, just family. Over dessert, my father clears his throat. "We've been watching all your segments," he says. "Your stories. They make people think." His tone carries no trace of the old authority, just warmth. "You've made something good out of all this." I nod, the weight between us lighter than it's been in years. When I drive back to the city that night, the highway is nearly empty. The sky above glows faintly with distant lights, and for once I don't rush the drive. I let it stretch mile by mile, a bridge between what I left behind and what I've built since. Now some nights after work I find myself journaling again. The same notebook that once held anger and confusion now fills with gratitude, small moments that add up to something quiet and strong. The smell of coffee in the newsroom, the way the sun hits my kitchen counter in the morning, the sound of my name said with respect instead of expectation. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd find peace not by fixing others, but by trusting myself, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's the truth of it sometimes. Justice isn't a grand confrontation. It's a gentle reclaiming the choice to stop shrinking for the sake of keeping others comfortable. I think about all the people who live years feeling indebted to those who never paid the same price. To them, I'd say this freedom rarely comes with permission. Sometimes you have to walk out the door, even when your hands shake, and trust that what waits on the other side is worth the risk. These days, my life feels like a story I no longer have to explain. It's enough to live it, to keep showing up, doing what I love, and letting peace take the place of guilt. And if my story reaches someone who's standing at their own crossroads, afraid to take that first step, I hope they know they're not alone. Before you go, take a moment to think about the weight you've been carrying that isn't really yours. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to choose yourself.